Well, liberalism is a disease. It's a mental disorder, and it's a failed experiment. I mean, we've all seen the t-shirts, the memes. Liberalism is a mental disease.
You are supporting Nazis.
This is
Do you
like
understand that?
communism?
Yeah, I am.
Think you should keep it?
It's a baby. If someone was raped and she gave birth and she decided to kill her 3-year-old child.
Look no further than what's going on the streets of San Francisco to come to the conclusion that liberalism, Marxism, socialism is a dead end. And in fact, it's worse than a dead end. It's the direct path to death and destruction. Hey guys, Sean from SGT Report here. Thank you so very much for tuning in. Before we get to the interview, I do want to thank the sponsor of this video, Virtual Shield. Over just the last 30 days, Capital One, the Central Bank of Europe, and the great state of Texas have all been hacked in major data breaches. So who's next? Look, one of the best things you can do to help protect yourself online is invest in a VPN, a virtual private network. A VPN allows you to create a secure connection to another network over the internet. VPNs like Virtual Shield can be used to shield your browsing activity from the prying eyes of Big Brother, whether you're on a public Wi-Fi connection at a coffee shop, in a foreign country, or at home. You can go to virtualshield.com, download the free 30-day trial, and install it. Here, let me show you how easy this is. I just go up to this little icon, the shield up there in the upper right-hand corner. I click it, and then I connect to Virtual Shield. And now you can see that my IP address says that it's coming from Chicago, Illinois. I don't live anywhere near Illinois. So that's how a VPN works. This month, Virtual Shield is offering their anniversary special of 30% off all VPN plans and all premium add-ons, including Protection Plus, residential access, and VIP performance plans for as low as a cup of coffee. Sign up for your free 30-day trial to Virtual Shield VPN and see what the hype's about. You have nothing to lose and your privacy to keep. I'll leave the link below this video. Hey friends, Sean from SGT Report. How are you? I've been battling just a tinge of depression personally over the past week or two because the analytics on my YouTube channel are getting so bad and YouTube's algorithm changes are working so effectively that I'm reaching fewer and fewer of you. So please don't let Google beat us. Don't let YouTube beat us. Click that reminder bell, the notifications bell, and make sure you stay subscribed. It means the world to me because, as I've said so many times before, guys, without you, there's no reason to do this kind of work, especially if YouTube's not going to let people hear it. And so I really appreciate you guys. I wanted to say that right off the bat. I hate to start as a downer, but I got to be honest with you guys. We know that Google's own papers have talked about the fairness and equality. Once that's removed from the platform, it's very demoralizing. It's very de-incentivizing, and it's causing a lot of problems for people in the space. So as we're being targeted by the YouTube algorithms, thanks for staying subscribed and visiting us directly at sgtreport.com, where you can always find my latest 3 videos at the very top of the page. It's my pleasure today to welcome to the show my buddy Kenneth Amaduri. He's the founder and chief editor over at crushthestreet.com. Kenneth, welcome back. How are you?
Thanks, Sean, and my condolences. I mean, it's such a sad situation that we're seeing here in what is going on with YouTube and the internet and the control on free speech, right? And this is the importance of this interview today because, you know, we're at a tipping point with what is going on around the world, this global collapse, this race to the bottom that every country essentially is doing to, you know, follow in the steps of the United States and interest rates and excessive monetary expansionary policies. And, you know, when this all happens, it's going to be guys like you that tell the truth on why this is happening, because they're going to blame free market. They're going to blame capitalism, and they're going to repackage it with socialism, big government, and the global elite are, you know, masters at this. They're very cunning. They know what they're doing, and they're getting ready for what is to come. And I want our listeners to be prepared, to be positioned, because there's going to be a frenzy that happens in precious metals. I guarantee it. There is going to be a frenzy, and the window of opportunity is closing in to be positioned in accordingly.
Yeah, I agree with you. I just had a conversation about this with our buddies over at SD Bullion. They concur. They know what's coming. And so it is our job, in the face of Google's censorship of truth and real news, It's our job to get the real news out. Now, you might recall, Kenneth, that back on around January 22nd of this year, YouTube officially announced they were changing their algorithms to filter out what they call misinformation. Now, that could include things about the deep state. That could include the plot to topple our sitting president, or that could include truthful information about the state of the US dollar as world's reserve currency and precious metals as a hedge against a calamity. They don't want that information out. And there's this famous photo of all of these, I guess you'd call them gorillas of Silicon Valley, sitting around at a dinner together. This picture includes John Chambers, the CEO over at Cisco, Larry Ellison, the CEO of Oracle, Eric Schmidt, the former CEO of Google and Alphabet, Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook. These people not only are aligned against truth, in my opinion, they're aligned against the sitting president and the Constitution and Bill of Rights of the United States of America. And Kenneth, what do we have left if they take away our Constitution and our Bill of Rights and our free speech?
Well, I think ultimately truth wins out. The problem is, in manipulated scenarios, things get very, very distorted. When you misalign the incentives of us, the citizens, the people, and you take it to such a tipping point, ultimately there has to be a massive correction, whether you're talking about, social policies, government policies, economic policies, and we are such a bubble, an everything bubble, if you will, beyond the markets. And ultimately, this is going to come to the surface. And we saw that, right? The 2016 election was a massive awakening moment for the people. And I think the no collusion, the Russia hoax that the mainstream media continuously spouted against the president was a real opportunity to show that this is all lies coming from them. Literally, CNN is pivoting from Russia to racism to now recession. And recession is something that, many of us have been talking about for so long now. Now they're just, clinging on to it to topple this president here in 2020. But, I'm not someone who buys the government numbers and believes them. But, there has been a level of strength in the economy that has happened, because of crazy monetary printing that we've seen. And because of that, the unemployment rate has come down. And really, there's been no other president in history that has, quote unquote, seen the unemployment at full employment and lost their second term. But we've never had a media attack the sitting president the way we've had now. So it's not apples to apples. So I'd be curious to see what happens here in 2020. I think Trump has a lot more support than obviously the media would lead everyone to believe. And he's attacking things like the deep state and like, the problems in the government in different ways. And those are positive, really positive things for us as citizens going forward.
Yeah, well, this horror media, and I would include Google as part of that when I make that statement, is trying to convince the people that Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, even Cory Booker has the support right now, has enough votes to beat Donald J. Trump in the 2020 election. And it's just preposterous. And I'll just share this with you. I think it's amusing. It speaks to the times in which we live. Government orders Google to let employees express unpopular political views. You just can't make this up. I mentioned it at the end of that SD Bullion interview. Let's flush this out. The National Labor Relations Board has reached a settlement with Google over complaints that the search giant punishes employees for speaking out on political and workplace issues that don't comport with the company's agenda. Let that sink in, folks. The company's agenda is a leftist, Marxist, New World Order globalist agenda. It does not comport with the Constitution or the Bill of Rights or Section 230 of the Communications Indecency Act. That's what needs to be said. And when I interviewed Google whistleblower Zach Voorhees, who was fired for speaking truth about the company stacking the deck against conservatives in the Bill of Rights and free speech, he was fired for doing just that. So now we have the government ordering Google to let employees express unpopular political views. Kenneth, in your view, how likely do you suppose it will be that conservatives will now flourish at Google?
Well, I mean, it's such an infestation that we're seeing with this liberal agenda. And that's such a sad thing, right? California and so many places that that once were thriving, have never started off with this big government, top-down approach that have contributed to the success of the current state, and right now we're seeing California completely, implode, unfortunately. And it's an infestation because a lot of these policies are going global. And we're seeing that trickle into, cities like Austin, Texas, Nashville, Tennessee, Denver, Colorado, and a lot of states that were otherwise, conservative are leaning liberal in so many instances. And it's because of this. It's because of instant gratification versus deferred gratification. The things that we talk about are more difficult for the average listener because it requires more understanding and more deferred gratification, which is deeper roots. But liberalism is instant gratification. Oh, you don't want the kids to be healthy? We need free healthcare, right? That's the sell. You don't want the society educated? Well, a solution to that is free college. And so when they have that moral high ground, and I'll put that in quotes, it's so easy to pitch to people their agendas. And sure, why would we want Sean at SGT talking about the problems with liberalism? Why would we want, Max Slavo and sites like Zero Hedge and all of these alternative media sites, which have been completely attacked out there to be free to speak, free to share information that is real. And that's the problem. And so as far as, what we have to do, we have to just continue to share this information because ultimately there's going to be a tipping point where much of these problems come to surface. I mean, and it's going to manifest itself in different ways, right? The homeless problem in California, people are going to get tired of that ultimately. I mean, that's a real life mainstream problem. People living in even wealthy communities are looking on the streets and going, hey, what is going on here? We can't live like this. This is unsanitary. People are getting sick because of this. And I mean, that's when rubber meets the road, because so many of the policies that we talk about, we're so far disconnected from, right? Mm-hmm. And that's the problem with our system today. People vote themselves free gifts, but are disconnected from the consequences, or at least they feel very disconnected from the consequences of their actions. And that's the problem that we're facing. That's the problem the world is facing, which is, again, part of this race to the bottom.
Yeah. Well, liberalism is a disease. It's a mental disorder, and it's a failed experiment. I mean, we've all seen the T-shirts, the memes. Liberalism is a mental disease.
You are supporting Nazis. Do you understand that?
Communism?
Yeah, I am.
And they're like, I'm a 16-year-old and I can't have this baby. Think you should keep it?
It's a baby. If someone was raped and she gave birth and she decided to kill her 3-year-old child.
Look no further than what's going on the streets of San Francisco to come to the conclusion that liberalism, Marxism, socialism is a dead end. And in fact, it's worse than a dead end. It's the direct path to death and destruction. And so that's what we're standing against. We're standing against that tyranny. It's the tyranny of globalism, of a one global government and a one global religion. That's what these people at the very top want. But I don't think the average socialist, not even maybe the average person, the below average person in Antifa marching in the streets of Portland, has any idea that they're actually doing the service of the globalist banksters, Kenneth. That's the punchline to the story. These brain dead, mentally disturbed people have no idea that they're carrying the water for the globalist bankers who run this planet. The same bankers who are now making a case for a 100-year U.S. government bond. I mean, did you ever think we'd live to see this, a 100-year bond in QE to infinity?
I mean, look at 95% of the income gain since 2000 have gone to the top 1%. And that's kind of an old stat now, right? I mean, it's probably even more than that with the inflation and the asset prices we've seen rise. And again, it's going towards the rich, the wealthy, and the people that own assets. And it's in the name of helping the poor, the middle class, while the narrative is all wrong, right? You know, this injection of money that's gone into our system is not to help the people, but that's what it's being sold to everyone as. And there's a massive disconnect here. And again, this negative interest rate environment, what, $16 trillion of negative yielding, sovereign debt around the world. I think there's 30 trillion real negative yielding debt going around the world. I mean, who in their right mind goes out and lends money to have less money back years down the road? The incentive, again, is misaligned. When you enter a transaction with somebody, you give something, they get something, and you both get something. But in a situation where one person gives something and then gives again by paying for that privilege, again, the interests are misaligned. And that's why this whole system is ready to implode. Really, the only people that are buying negative yielding bonds right now are speculators. They're speculating that the bond is going to go even more negative, and therefore their value might go up. But that's how extreme this Las Vegas casino has become, in that it's become totally unsustainable. And we've gone to such an extreme that I agree with Ray Dalio. We're going to have to see some sort of helicopter money situation for the next round of QE, whether that's UBI, checks directly to individuals. And guess what? People are going to love it. That's the thing. It's going to be sold to people, and the average person is going to, wow, what a beautiful thing. And it's going to continue to pump this system up and divert capital from the middle class to the wealthy, all in this process. And the only way to protect yourself against this is owning physical precious metals, being positioned in this really once in a lifetime opportunity in gold and silver that is actually fleeting, right? I mean, we were at $1,300 gold not that long ago. Right now, we're $1,500 gold. And it wasn't that long ago that I think I was on your show telling people that people are going to need to see, $1,400 gold to have the confidence to enter this space once again. And unfortunately, many people are going to be on the sidelines, not taking advantage of this opportunity because they've been burned for so many years. I mean, we've talked about this. I think the last time we spoke about precious metals, it was kind of exhausting, right? We were talking about this in an environment that gold was being very depressed. Right. And now we have a new environment, and many people are going to be on the sidelines because they're going to hope and pray for $1,300 again for gold. And that may be a number that we may never see again in our lifetime. And it's important to understand that gold's going much higher than it is right now. And I've been telling people that it's kind of like a $3,000 Bitcoin moment. And keep in mind, when that happened, when it was $3,000, people, some people were interested, but they stayed on the sidelines because they wanted $1,500 Bitcoin. They wanted $2,000 Bitcoin, but look where it is now. It's $10,000. It was at $20,000. $3,000 Bitcoin is a steal. And that's what I want people to understand at $1,500 gold. At $18 silver, my goodness, we're still triple digit returns just to get back to $49. So the opportunity right now is for the taking. Don't get too wrapped up in the nominal figures that, are yesterday and weeks ago, earlier this year. I mean, the opportunity is now.
Yeah, let me just say one thing. I'll tie this together. I think it makes sense. And it's this idea of manipulation. The same manipulation and algorithmic changes that Google and YouTube have engaged in are demoralizing and de-incentivizing those of us who make truthful content, right? The stuff they label misinformation. If they can bury us and if they can prevent us from reaching our audience and we can watch our numbers continue to fall, it's very demoralizing. The same can be said about the manipulation of silver and gold. It's the exact same playbook. They wanted to demoralize people. If you keep silver at 14 year after year after year, if it only goes down after it hit 50, year after year after year, people get worn out. They start to believe that it will never go back up, and that the manipulation will never end, and that it can never end. And that's what they want. That's by design. They don't want people buying precious metals. They don't want the prices rising, Kenneth, because it would send a very important message to the world. And that message is your dollar is fallible. The fiat money in your wallet is fallible. It is at risk. In a world where Germany just issued its first negative yielding 30-year debt instrument, the world's gone mad, but they don't want you to know it. They want you to have normalcy bias. They want you to believe that the manipulation will never end, just as Google and YouTube wants me to believe it will never end, and I should just go away, take my lumps, and quit. Well, I'm not going to quit. We're going to keep speaking truth, and we're going to scream it from the rooftops. The dollar is fallible. Fiat currencies around the world are on fire. QE to infinity is real, and gold and silver in physical form are real wealth.
Absolutely. I mean, we're seeing Russia and China really take the bull by the horns on this and stockpile their gold supplies. I mean, my goodness. They understand the problems with the US dollar, and it's the currency of their antagonist, if you will. You know, of course they want to get away from the US dollar and get into gold. And you know, that's the situation that we're seeing right now. It's an important time to be looking at precious metals and understand that this manipulation can't go on forever. On an annualized basis, I want to say the SLV is now purchasing 500 million ounces of silver right now. That was a statistic I heard from Eric Sprott, and you know how big of a silver bug he is. The opportunity right now is huge because, you know, that's half of what we produce in a year going to just the SLV. So you're in hyperdrive manipulating the precious metals down because they understand what will happen if really a small amount of people enter the precious metal space. There's only, in terms of what people own in the US for equities and total assets, less than 0.5% of people are in precious metals. You go back to 1980, that was a time when people had like 8% of total wealth in precious metals. You know, the average is 2%. So just going back to average would be a moonshot for gold and silver in this environment. And by the way, if you go back to 1980, you know, when gold peaked at around $800, I mean, we're talking about a revaluation just to go to that inflation adjusted high of $2,400 in 2018. And I think we're going to go way past, you know, our all-time high of $800 in real terms. And silver would be $149 if it went back to its 1980 high of $49. And this is using the Federal Reserve inflation rate, by the way. It's not even like a real inflation rate. It's the Federal Reserve admitted inflation rate. So the opportunity, again, I mean, my goodness, Sean, you know, we're going to see gold and silver do something here in the next few years that we will tell our kids and grandkids about. The bull market of 2019, 2020, and my goodness, the miners, those are going to be where the real leverage returns happen, which I'm also very excited about.
Yeah, the mining stocks. My God, they've been on the move finally. And like the punchline to any good story, most people didn't get to participate because, again, the manipulation of this sector had these things beaten down so badly. I mean, literally, anybody who held mining stocks, I guess not literally, but figuratively, it felt like you were bleeding from your ears, bleeding from your eyes every time you looked at these damn things because they would only go down. But some of them have bounced back quite nicely, haven't they?
Yeah, they really have. And, you know, we can look at what happened in 2018. Towards the end of the year, the Federal Reserve started tightening monetary policy, the stock market down 20%, you know, in the face of what was supposedly a good economy, right? And then we started to see gold move higher as it reacted to the markets and as it reacted to, you know, the inevitability of a Federal Reserve policy change. And, even yesterday, I know we're doing this interview on 9/12. So on 9/11, gold and silver were essentially flat. We had First Majestic Silver move up strong. It was up like 4% at certain times of the day, because even on a flat day in this environment in September of 2019, there is an extremely strong amount of confidence that have entered the precious metal space, and specifically the mining shares. And I've speaking with a lot of companies, a lot of CEOs, and they're getting aggressive with what they're doing, their investments, because they know that this is a real turnaround happening in the precious metal space. So, when we do have these flat days or these down days, I don't think we're going to see a massive change in the mining shares, because people know where this is going. There's a degree of confidence that we haven't seen in the sector for years that is now re-entering the space. And again, if we see that small move of capital enter the precious metal space, I think it'll be huge. But it's going to happen. I mean, we have all this negative yielding debt around the world, just a little bit of air being released from this, imploding, expanding stock market. Going into precious metals is going to be huge leverage returns for mining investors. So it's a very exciting time. And again, it's going to be timely to be in now, because the window of opportunity is closing. Keep in mind, you're not going to want to be jumping in these things when they're moving up hundreds of percents, or 50% in a day, 20% in a day. You're going to be on the sidelines most likely, because you're going to be like anyone else going, hey, I missed the opportunity to get in while it was cheap. And just like people, had to chase Bitcoin higher and higher and higher until it got to call it 15,000. People were scratching their head wondering if it was off to 100,000 at that point, right? I think you and I were chatting about it. It's like, my goodness, look what's going on right now. And that's what's going to happen in the precious metal space. And so the whole point of why I wanted to do this interview with you today, Sean, is to tell people that this is the time to be positioned. And you're not going to want to be getting in these things when there's a frenzy, because it's going to be extremely psychological and difficult to get in these things when there's a frenzy. And now there's an opportunity to get in, be positioned, and honestly enjoy that bubble that we are going to go into, especially in the mining stocks. I would never recommend selling your precious metals. That's your insurance hedge. That's going to be, your hedge against the dollar and the currency problems and the debt-based monetary system. But especially if you get into precious metals mining stocks, you're going to want to obviously take profits off the table, because that's going to be a window where we're going to see massive gains, and you're going to want to have something to show for it in the end.
Yeah. I think it's time, in a world with 100-year bonds, it's time for gold and silver to move higher and find their equilibrium in a world drowning in debt and fiat. So I think that's where we're headed. And those that hold silver and gold in physical form will certainly fare better than those who don't have any. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you can even look at economic data too. I mean, the Purchasing Managers Index, this was, something that I got from Frank Holmes. He was on Fox Business, along with Peter Schiff. And, he pointed out that over the past 15 months, PMI has fallen for 15 months straight. I mean, this has to do with the economy. And again, it's slowing despite what, we might hear from even Trump. I mean, he's a promoter of the U.S. economy and what he's doing. He wants to make himself look good despite anything. He wants to get elected once again. But things are getting rough. And, the Fed has shot their wad. It's going to be very difficult for them to lower interest rates much lower than where they were. I mean, even at the 2008 financial crisis, they were able to lower interest rates by 500 basis points. We can't do that once again. And we're 10 years into this bull market in equities. And there needs to be a release. And unfortunately, it's going to be a collapse situation because of how far and how bad this manipulated economy has gone. And it's going to benefit the precious metals investors. And we're going to be on the receiving end of this transfer of wealth that is brewing. And that's what's, optimistic. That's what's exciting. It's sad on one end, but we're all in this matrix to a certain degree, and we need to anticipate what is going on around us, so we're prepared. We don't want to be a victim of what is going on around us. We want to be prepared for what is going on around us. And that's the importance of what we're talking about.
Yeah, that's right. Well, the tide is turning, guys. You have to understand that the U.S. dollar will not go on as the world's reserve currency for very much longer. In fact, there are countries actively moving against it, and the tide is turning. But the good news is the tide is turning against the deep state to some extent as well. As we're having this conversation today, U.S. Attorney recommends proceeding with charges against Andrew McCabe as DOJ rejects last-ditch appeal. Let's watch these deep staters go to prison. That would really bring me joy, and perhaps even more joy than a $100 silver per ounce price. I don't know. That's just me. I want to see these deep staters rounded up and put in jail. The Constitution, the Bill of Rights has to come first, but along with that is honest money, guys. And if you don't have silver and gold in physical form, I just don't know what to tell you. I don't think this U.S. dollar, this fiat reserve currency in your wallet, it's just not. I'll tell you this much, Kenneth, as we round this out. If you're getting 2% a year interest on a 30-year bond, you will be losing your shirt if you hold that bad boy for 30 years, even 10 years, probably even 5. Do you want to shout out your websites for us there, Kenneth?
Absolutely. Sean, thanks so much for having me on the show. My website is crushthestreet.com. If you want more information like this, visit us at crushthestreet.com. We got an army of writers and contributors there who post on, everything regarding the markets, gold and silver, macroeconomics, crypto, if you're interested in crypto. And I also have a YouTube channel as well at youtube.com/crushthestreet. And yeah, if you want a special report regarding some of the top tier mining stocks, including First Majestic, visit my site at crushthestreet.com/4W for that report. If you're a believer in what is going on in precious metals and you want that leveraged exposure after you've purchased your physical, here's a great place to start. So again, Sean, thanks for having me on the show today.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thanks for coming on. And guys, thank you so much for listening, sharing this interview within your sphere of influence if it resonated with you. And again, thanks so much for your support, guys. The Patreons, the less than 1%, thank you so very much. You're keeping us in the fight, literally keeping us in the fight against YouTube as they try to strangle us and silence us. So we very much appreciate our patrons. And for Real News 24/7, guys, of course, visit us directly at sgtreport.com. You'll always find my latest 3 videos at the very top of that page, plus real news all day long, 24/7. Real news, the antidote to corporate propaganda. Thanks so much for listening, guys. God bless. Bye-bye.
What Google and YouTube are doing is that they are deliberately destroying their platforms in order to achieve their political agenda.